Welcome back to the Vanessa G Fitcast. I'm Vanessa Pozos, and here with me today, I actually have two guests on today. I'm very, very excited about this podcast. Today, we have on two of our fabulous coaches here at Vital Spark Coaching. We have both Coach Kat and Coach Olivia on, who are, for our clients, know that they are both incredible coaches. They are also postpartum experts, so they are both pre and postnatal certified fitness and nutrition experts here. And both of them are new moms, both first time moms at different phases of their postpartum journeys. And so I thought today would be a fun episode for us to come together and have a little bit of like a girls' talk roundtable discussion here about postpartum health and wellness, about all things through their own journeys and just anything that they can share with us that might help, other women out there, whether you are currently in a postpartum journey or whether you hope to be in a postpartum journey at one point in your life. I think there's going to be some incredible takeaways for us all here. So, Kat, Liv, welcome. Thank you guys for taking some time to chat with us here on the Vanessa G Fitcast. But I would love if we could maybe start out by both of you kind of sharing with us a little bit of where you are in your postpartum journeys and just like a little bit of overview of your postpartum journey so far. So, how about let's start with Kat, since she is more newly postpartum. Kat, let's start with you.
Yes, hello everyone. So my daughter is just about 18 weeks. So I'm 18 weeks into my postpartum journey. And even within that period of time, there's been ups and downs. It's been all over the place. It was only just a couple weeks ago that I went back to a gym for the first time. And, um, so we're taking it slow and steady, but we're approaching the 5 month mark here in a couple weeks.
It's exciting. I love it. Liv, what about you? How is your postpartum journey? Catch us up on where you're at.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm super excited to be having this conversation today. I've lost count of the weeks at this point, but my son is 8 months old, so somewhere around the 8 month mark postpartum. And, I'm going to echo Kat when I say there has been, ups and downs and, navigating this new season of life, also paired with, my own fitness journey has, had its challenges, but also, it's been a really cool way to view fitness and health in just a new light. So it's been a really cool experience, and I'm really excited to dive into it.
I love it. Well, it's really, really cool to be able to talk to two women who are incredibly inspiring within their own health and fitness journeys, but also to be able to look at how each of your journeys have been unique because every journey is different. We know this from the many postpartum moms that we've worked with that no journey is exactly the same. Everybody has a little bit of a different experience that may have started with their pregnancy, maybe being a little bit different. Some people having some different challenges. So, I mean, I would love to have a little bit more, I guess, context from you guys. Let's share a little bit more around maybe some of the changes that you each have just experienced in your health and your body since becoming moms.
Yeah, I can go first. So, some changes that I've experienced in my body. I was very fortunate and blessed that the first child I brought into this world, it was a very quick process of her getting here. I think I pushed 3 times and the doctor's like, "Whoa," or the nurse was like, "You need to wait for the doctor to be in here. She's here." Um, which I think is part of what's led to my recovery process. I did a lot of work during my pregnancy on my core and pelvic floor, and I don't think it was a coincidence that I didn't have to push for very long. I think I was doing things before that allowed for that to happen. And with all that said, my doctor did a 4 week checkup, and like cleared me for exercise right then. And I didn't feel ready to like hit the gym right at the 4 week mark just because my doctor said so. And that was, a pretty big win to be able to listen to my body more intuitively. I know myself and, kind of pulled off and continued doing more walks and stretching and gave myself a couple more weeks before I did feel comfortable, adding some resistance training and things like that back in. But all of that to say, I think some of the work in pregnancy allowed me to feel confident in engaging exercise when I did and feel like I still have some muscle there, you guys, that didn't just all go away from having a baby. Like there was a solid foundation and now it's exciting getting able to build on that. But there were many days still in diapers and many days where I'm holding on to the banister, walking down the stairs and, being more cautious of things. And that, kind of slowly lessened over time and I started to feel more like myself again.
The power of building that muscle even pre-pregnancy. I love it.
Absolutely.
Liv, what about you? What have been, like your kind of journey, your experience with just changes in your body and your health through this process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, I thinking back to, how I've prepared myself just like over the years, I think also really led into my experience with like pregnancy and postpartum. And I actually remember when I was like actively in labor, like pushing my son out, and not to be like graphic or anything, but Michael was like my coach in my ear, and he was saying, just pretend you're in the gym getting a PR, and like was just like coaching me through, and it was just so like such a fun moment because we like share that, um because we like both like to work out and we go to the gym together and things like that. So that was really fun. But I will say in postpartum, I actually was diagnosed with postpartum preeclampsia. So during my pregnancy, I had a lot of swelling, and I had like premonitions that I thought I had preeclampsia, but was never diagnosed with it like during pregnancy. But postpartum I was, and so I actually had like elevated blood pressure for about 8 weeks um, after I had my son. And so there was a lot of like just being aware of that, having to like take my blood pressure like throughout the day and things like that, that I was had to be really aware of in the beginning. And so I took things like very slow, really focusing first on that. Um, and even up to this point, a lot of my journey has been focused on like healing my core, healing my pelvic floor, and just showing up in the capacity that I can. I actually still have not been to a gym yet since having Hayes, but I do focus a lot on like walking, and I get in home workouts and things like that. And so there's been a shift for me in the way that I approach fitness, because before I was very much, I will say, like a gym rat. Like I loved going to the gym and like lifting really heavy, and I was like, on my macros all the time. And I found this new sense of like flexibility and balance that allows me to really show up for myself and be able to like achieve the things I want to achieve in my fitness journey, while navigating what that looks like as a mom and as a working mom at that. And so that's been just a bit of a different journey for me. And so I guess when I'm looking at changes in my body, I think a lot of it has come back to me really focusing on like what I can control in each moment, in each day. And that can look different like week to week. It can look different day to day. But for me, a big focus of this, and I know I talked about this last time when I was on the podcast with you, Vanessa, but just looking at like, what can I do? What is my capacity? How can I show up in each season so that, I'm still able to make those steps forward, and being okay with and accepting that that's okay, that it looks different than it did pre-pregnancy.
I love your mindset around that, and I know both of you are incredible with mindset when it comes to coaching. So, I mean, I'm curious even from that side of things. Obviously, you both are wonderful when our clients come to you with certain types of struggles that might be a little bit more based in our thoughts, our beliefs, things like that. I'm curious though, like through this different phase of life, this completely new journey for both of you, what types of struggles have come up for you, maybe around like your mindsets, your thoughts, your beliefs, anything like that maybe come up for you? You're both kind of nodding your heads there. So I'm curious what's on your mind right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, even before I get there, just to this question even made me think, oh, there's a lot of changes that I didn't even talk about, like the stretch marks that I have on my boobs, or the fact that like some, pre-pregnancy clothes fit and like some don't, and like my hips are a little bit wider. So there's a whole slew of like these physical changes that I think when like you're right that we help our clients with this all the time, and then when you're having these thoughts of you know, like this was maybe like a 2 or 3 weeks ago. I'm taking my daughter to the pool for the first time, and I hadn't worn a bikini. I hadn't put on a bathing suit, and I couldn't even tell you how long. And, she went down for a nap and I'm in my closet trying to find one and put one on. And, first thought wasn't the kindest. It was like, oh, should I really be wearing this? And then taking a step back and being able to coach myself, like I coach my clients of, all the great things when I look at my body, which for me personally is so much easier to do as a mom. Really being able to think about all that my body does for her, and not just that it provides her food right now and safety and comfort and a place, but my body's still mine too. And I think it helps me to take a step back and not only look at like my body through her lens, like what does she see? She sees the most perfect human being on the planet outside of like her dad too. Um, but it helps me to think like, what kind of thoughts do I want her to grow up thinking about her own body? And that like really hits me and can put things into perspective for me real quick.
That's powerful. Yeah. And Liv, I want to hear from you as well. I know you were nodding. I know you have some things to add here, but what you were saying there, Kat, actually reminds me of I had a consultation just earlier today with a girl. I won't share her name. I won't reveal her, but she was somebody that actually previously worked with you, Kat. She worked with us in coaching about 2 years ago, and she, was working on fat loss, and she had a really, really great journey, and she loved going through that process, working one-on-one with you. And now she actually came back here because she's also in a new phase of life. She's actually in a postpartum journey, and she's realizing how different the challenges are of this postpartum process. And something she said today that you sharing that actually reminds me of. And she said, this time around, I just have such a deeper why, because I can look at my little daughter and I just know that I need to make these changes for myself, because even though I am overall, blessed with overall good health, and I've always been someone who's active and fit, I just know that it's so easy to let things start to slip away. And I don't want to end up, 5-10 years down the road, suddenly not being able to keep up with her or my other future kids, starting to get winded, not feeling great, or looking in the mirror and having these negative thoughts, and maybe like jumping into like low carb diets and letting these things drip into their own little mindsets. And so it's so powerful if we can even just bring awareness to the way that we think about ourselves and our bodies through such a vulnerable time of our lives that I personally haven't experienced yet, and I don't know how that feels. And I think a lot of women will never know it until they're in it, which is why I'm so grateful to be able to talk to you guys about your journeys. But Liv, what about you? What comes up for you when we're talking about like these mindset struggles and things like that?
Originally just kind of came up for me, and I kind of want to dive into it just because I think it's something I wasn't as prepared for going into like pregnancy and postpartum. Was just like, I would consider myself to be like a very even keeled person. Like I don't get like very mad, or like, I don't know, I feel like I'm generally just kind of like a chill person for the most part. Now, during pregnancy, I started to notice like I had more of like roller coaster of emotions. And, of course, as like hormonal changes occur, like that can be very normal, but it was something I wasn't necessarily really prepared for. And even early postpartum, I like found myself getting like very like mad. And I didn't even
Mm.
know why. And it was a very weird time for me where like I would just like storm into my bedroom for no reason, or, just feel like I just wanted to like start bawling my eyes out and didn't know why. And so it was a very new like experience for me mentally to go through, normally being able to very much like regulate my emotions and bring myself back to like, my normal place whenever, something came up that would normally like frustrate me, or anything like that. I could talk myself through it. But especially in the early postpartum days, like I had a really hard time navigating the ups and downs mentally and emotionally that I went through. And so that's something that, I personally struggled with for a little bit of time, especially in the beginning. Um, I would say more so throughout like this later part, postpartum. I think mentally, there, a lot of my struggles have just been with like, how do I navigate life? Right? Because like in the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, like, I'm like at home with my baby. And then like with each new season, navigating like what that looks like. And I know like, Kat, I've even asked you, I'm struggling with how I'm working while having Hayes. And, I mean, you've even talked me through it of just, leaning into knowing that each season is just a season, right? And like, we're going to get good at something and then it's going to change. And like that can be something that's actually fun, right? And we get to like view that as, a new opportunity to learn and to grow. And I think that was something that really stuck with me ever since, you told me that. And I think it's so fun when like us as coaches, we get to like help each other and coach each other just like through some of the struggles that we're having. But that really stuck with me because, it is so true that throughout this journey, there are always going to be changes, and that gets to kind of be a fun part of it, even when in the middle of it, it can feel really hard, but knowing that it like doesn't last forever, and that we get a chance to like practice our resiliency and practice our problem solving. So I think like mentally, that's kind of been something that has shifted for me a lot, is where I used to be very like structure oriented and, figuring out like, okay, what's going to be my routine and things like that in the beginning was helpful. But now more leaning into, every day might look different. And like, that gets to be okay. That gets to be the new normal. And so I've found a new sense of flexibility there.
That's really powerful. What you're saying there even reminds me of, I have a mentor who's also a mom, and I once heard her say how motherhood is truly one of the most humbling things, because as soon as you have this baby where you're like, okay, I finally understand how to take care of this, 2-month old. I'm getting everything in line. I feel good about this. I feel confident. I know what I'm doing now. Suddenly, like, huge growth spurt, and now everything is new, everything is different, and now you're overwhelmed again. And so my blessing in this has been able to be part of your journeys from the outside looking in, and being able to watch you guys navigate motherhood while working, while having all these other pieces of your identities too, and really being able to kind of support you guys in opening up space for you to share some of the struggles that you've been through throughout this process. I know, Liv, I remember specifically we had a conversation, a little bit earlier on. I think this maybe was when Hayes was about 4 months old or so, and you were sharing how your goals at that point in time. You're like, I just am working on just getting consistent with really small basics, things that in the past used to be not even a thought for you. As someone who's really like your career, your life is so revolved around health and fitness, you never would have expected yourself to be somebody that has to actually focus on getting in enough water. And you're like, you know what? My goal is just to focus on getting in enough water. If I remember correctly, I think that was one of the goals you had set. So I'm curious if you could speak to that even a little bit, of how did you go about adding back in habits and routines and things focused a little bit more specifically around your health and fitness and that part of your life, while navigating the challenges of having a newborn?
Yeah, I love this question because it's something that I mean, throughout my pregnancy, I had a focus on like movement. I walked a lot. I went to the gym except for later in my pregnancy. So I was still like staying pretty consistent with working out and things like that and being aware of like nutrition. But I found myself in postpartum being like, I actually don't have a lot of these habits that I used to have. And it felt really hard to, yeah, make sure I was drinking enough water or like getting in any movement. I would spend many days where I looked at my watch and I'm like, I got like 2,000 steps today. And, trying to think back to, what it was like to have those routines felt really challenging because it used to be like so second nature. And I found myself in this like comparison game of like, well, I used to like get 10,000 steps a day, no problem. Or I used to, eat this much protein every day. And it was just like so simple and so, easy for me at that time. And so that's where I think the mindset shift of like meeting myself where I was at really started, because I felt a lot of like almost like shame and guilt around, the fact that it was so hard for me. I was like, I literally help people do this. Why is it so hard for me to like create these habits and these routines? And, I kind of had to strip away the identities that I was trying to fit myself into, of being like, well, I used to do this and comparing to that, or, having this identity of like, well, if I'm a coach, then I must be an expert and doing all of the things all of the time. And so for me, the way that I was able to really like create those habits was removing the expectation in looking at like, where am I at today? Okay, if I'm at 2,000 steps today, maybe I'm not aiming for 10,000. What if I just aim for like 3 or 4 and work there for a little bit? And then maybe I feel like I can make my way to 5, and really focusing on like the small steps that I could take, because that was a lot more digestible than looking at, well, how do I be the past version of myself? Because the truth is, like, I'm not in the same place as I was then. And, you know, a lot has changed, and I have different responsibilities now, and life looks different now. And so, you know, I think a big piece of that was, like I said, really like just meeting myself where I'm at, and then seeing like what's the small action step I can take to get that to that like 1% better, right? And then from there, what's the next action step that I want to take, and what's the next action step that I want to take, so that I could really, you know, start to compound those, and create those wins for myself, where, you know, I started to find that new identity in this new season.
I love that. And thanks for sharing a little bit more about the struggle side of things too. I think that'll help a lot of women realize that they're not alone in the fact that like it might feel really hard at certain periods of time. Like I said in the beginning, everybody's journey looks differently. I mean, Kat, tell us a little bit more about your experience with just whether maintaining or adding back in, or working on, you know, the healthy habits that you like to kind of hold yourself to.
Yeah, I think that we all know the saying that comparison is a thief of joy. In postpartum, that could not be more true. And so, I mean, very similarly to Olivia, initially postpartum, going into it with like, oh, like it's going to be so easy to get back into things. I'm a coach. I do this for a living. Like just thinking it would be so easy. And the reality is it wasn't. You know, life is very, very different. And I think what really helped me was when I was able to acknowledge that life is different, and who I was before, the things I did before, isn't necessarily at this point in time the best version of me. And so I had to really take a step back and look at what was going to be realistic. For me, it was really helpful to identify like what's my minimum effective dose? What is the minimum that I need to do on a daily basis for me to feel good, for me to feel healthy, for me to feel like I'm getting a win? And that boiled down to, you know, drinking a gallon of water, making sure I had, you know, 3 main meals a day and a snack, and doing some kind of like movement, bonus if like if it was outside. But I had to really give myself the grace and give myself the permission not to day one be, you know, pregnancy Kat, you know, pre-pregnancy Kat, and give myself the opportunity to become the new version of me. And I think what's so beautiful about postpartum is it offers so much opportunity. Like I can be a more fit Kat. I can be a healthier, a stronger, a faster Kat than even before. So I had to really remind myself that I'm not limited to who I once was, but I had to give myself a lot of grace, and still do, to get to where I want to be. Because I'm not there yet, and that's okay. I know that every time I take an action, it goes into my, you know, little progress penny bank, and I'm just collecting them. And when I'm more realistic about what I can achieve in a given day, I'm a lot happier. The times that I get frustrated with myself is when I'm, you know, chasing the moon and trying to do a million things. That just is going to make me frustrated because I'm asking too much of myself. So that looks like a daily thing, like Liv said, of what does today look like? What do I have going on? What can I do? If I can't do, you know, X that I used to do, what's like the next best thing? And me focusing on that and knowing that this is a season and the season's going to change just like seasons in life do. Like I can get back to doing more things when it feels comfortable for me. And when I wait for it to feel comfortable and manageable, I'm going to stick to it.
Absolutely. That's probably a little bit of the advice that a lot of women need to hear around just being honest with yourself about what's realistic for you specifically, not, you know, what's realistic for all moms, not what's realistic for, you know, the moms you see on social media, but like for you in your life, the demands of your life, what is realistic right now? What can you hold yourself to? I love the minimum effective dose concept as well. Um, you know, I think something I would love to dive even a little bit deeper in with you guys. I think a lot of women would be mad at me if I didn't dive deeper into the fact that obviously we have two incredible women who work in the health and fitness industry, are both new moms. I think a lot of women probably want to hear a little bit more of like the behind the scenes of what your maybe process has been for yourself postpartum when it comes to your health and fitness. Like, what have been your specific structured, routines or phases, or, are there specific goals you're working towards with your health or your fitness, your body, anything like that? And if so, what has been your kind of processes and strategies to help yourself get there?
I love this question and happy to give behind the scenes. For me, what it looked like very like immediate postpartum, I think I was on the couch with my daughter for like 3 full days and maybe just got up to walk to the kitchen. Like there was no expectation of what I had to do in those early days. And especially in that time, really focusing on like key habits for me have been from day one and continue to be, but that I'm drinking enough water. I'm breastfeeding, and water is incredibly important for producing milk. You got to be drinking water, um, and so that's always been a focus in terms of nutritionally. I'm not tracking macros. I put a lot of time over years to really trust myself to eat intuitively. And so that's the nutrition approach that I've taken postpartum, and I did for the majority of my pregnancy as well. And so I have a very good idea of how much protein and carbs and fats to be including in a day, and making sure that I'm making balanced meals, really focusing on 3 meals and 2 snacks, if not 3, because breastfeeding, we also need a lot of calories. So I'm definitely not dieting over here. I'm not cutting out carbs or skipping any meals. Like, we're team eat your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. So that's been a very helpful approach for me nutritionally, not to feel like there's this pressure that I have to track right now, because I've got a lot of other things going on. So it makes me very grateful that I have that knowledge to not need that on my plate right now, and still know that I'm getting enough for me and for my baby. And in terms of, my return to exercise, like I said, I was cleared at 4 weeks from my doctor. I thought that was kind of early to have that checkup. But I think it was maybe a week to 2 weeks where I went on my first walk, and that walk was literally 5 minutes. And then I know that my next walk was like 10 minutes. And I think from there I jumped up to like 20 minutes, but it would just be like a very leisure walk. Like, I'm not pumping arms, I'm pushing the stroller, going for a nice leisure walk. I did a lot of core and pelvic floor work. So I put myself through like a 12-week rehabilitation program that I was following to really help gain back my control. Happy to say I can do jumping jacks and I don't pee my pants. So we love that for a mom. And I believe it was around 8 weeks postpartum that I was starting to do at home workouts. The first couple workouts were body weight. I didn't even think about reaching for a resistance band or a dumbbell. And then, if I'm remembering correctly, it was around 2 weeks of that. So around 10 weeks postpartum, I think I picked up dumbbells for the first time, and they were, fives, tens, and I felt the burn. That's all I needed. And it wasn't until more recently, so around 3.5 months postpartum, that for me right now, what is exciting to me is to go to a workout class right now. It's a gym that has like a bunch of moms, which has been awesome. But I just need someone to tell me what to do and not think for a little bit and be around. It's my opportunity to get out of the house for a day. And so I do that. And at first I did it just one time a week, and now sometimes it's 2 times a week. At most it's 3. That's really what I found being my sweet spot, to where I still feel like I'm prioritizing my health and fitness. But with other variables in life, work schedules of fiancés and things, that's what's realistic for me right now. So I think that about covers everything that I wanted to say there. I might have missed something, but I'm sure if I missed it, I know Liv will pick it up.
Yeah, Liv, what about you?
Yeah, so I mean, it's so crazy to look back on like 8 months and it feels like a lifetime thinking about what this has looked like. So I guess for me, so I had my son at the end of September, and really through until December, I primarily just focused on survival, truthfully. It was, to me, it was just a really big change, and navigating what that looked like, and navigating just being home with Hayes, and Michael only got a week off. So it was like me and him from the very beginning, and like, okay, kid, we're going to figure this thing out. So I prioritized a lot of survival for the first couple months, and, really just focused on like, getting in meals, drinking water, but didn't really prioritize a whole lot in terms of health and fitness. And I remember in December, um, I had decided, I was like, okay, I'm feeling like I got a handle on this. Like I don't feel like I'm in survival. I feel like we're, we understand each other, like me and Hayes, we understand each other. We like can get through our days. Like we feel pretty good. And I felt really, really good to start thinking about incorporating some more habits that made me feel good, because early on, I really prioritized just like him. So it was like, we're surviving. How do I take care of you? How do I take care of you? How do I take care of you? And, around that December mark, I really asked myself, like, well, how do I take care of me? And that's when I really started to like think on it. So at that point, I felt comfortable tracking, and to me, that felt really good. And now I know that, is not for everyone, especially not for everyone like postpartum. Um, just kind of depending on like how you feel, but for me that felt really good to have a grasp on like what I was eating, and it felt like I was kind of holding myself accountable to my nutrition as well. And so I actually did a little bit of a metabolic assessment on myself and realized that I was under eating, and especially breastfeeding and nursing and pumping and all of the things, milk, you need even more calories, and you need extra fuel to be able to provide for your own body and replenish those nutrient stores that get lost during pregnancy as well as when you are breastfeeding. And so I was able to recognize that, like, hey, I'm actually under eating a bit. And so I needed to do some work of a reverse diet. And so I started that in December, and I've worked my way up to, what's a good, caloric range for my body with, nursing and everything. And so nutrition wise, that's really been like my focus is prioritizing getting enough protein. And I just track like my protein and calories, because to me, that is what's realistic, not necessarily getting into the nitty gritty. And I will say there are many days where I'm not really hitting the mark, and that's okay. Because right now in this season of life, I'm feeling good with giving myself some of that like leeway. And I guess I'll get into this now. I know Vanessa and I were talking about this before, where I don't feel like I'm in a season where I necessarily am putting a ton of effort in, and to me that feels good. So it's not to say that I'm putting no effort in, but I've gotten to a place in my body where I now feel comfortable, and looking at what my life looks like, it feels good to track for the most part through the week, being mindful and being more intuitive on the weekends, just kind of like relying on, what I know about nutrition and how to fuel my body. I prioritize like drinking my water, getting in a morning walk and an evening walk. And, I, up to a few weeks ago, had been working out around 2 to 3 times a week just at home, with the weights that I have here. But then I ended up hurting my back. So that's like a whole thing that I'm working on now. But really looking at my journey. So I guess, yeah, starting in December, really started to focus on what my nutrition looked like to make sure I was fueling my body enough. And I think that's a big thing that I want to mention is I was not starting to track because I wanted to like lose weight, or I, was dieting by any means. For me, it was solely like, I want to make sure I'm eating enough, and I want to make sure I'm eating enough of the right things to support my body and my body actually getting nourishment. And so that's where I started. It felt really good for me. And then, throughout this process of just like really actually started eating more, and I've noticed my body start to change a lot as I was actually fueling it enough. So yeah, I guess in this season of life, what that structure looks like is I'm actually, a bit more lenient than I had been in the past. And it's been kind of cool because I'm acknowledging that I'm actually able to maintain what used to take me a lot of effort with less effort right now. And so, I'm not necessarily at the place my goal where I want to be. I have definitely lost some muscle since I haven't been, lifting as consistently or as heavy as I used to. But right now that feels okay. And it feels okay to, be in a body that I feel really comfortable in. And I can go, I put on a swimsuit and take my baby to the pool or to the lake and, feel good. And I don't have to think too much about it. But at the same time, knowing that, I'm putting in the amount of effort that feels really good at this season, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. And like you said, I know you and I have had kind of a one-on-one discussion a little bit more about this before, but I think it's helpful for people to kind of hear a little glimpse of something we had talked about, which is the idea that, we all, when everybody thinks about their lives, like you could split it into all the different sections of your life if you want to like think about the traditional life wheel of, okay, you have your health, you have finances, you have career, you have relationships, social, like all these different things that might make up a life. And at different phases in your life, different areas are going to get more attention than others. And I think where a lot of people can get stuck is if they're looking at all the different areas of their life, and let's say they're rating them on a 1 to 10 scale, and they're like, you know what, these areas of my life right now, whether it's my social life, my fitness, my career, like these ones are all lower rated, and they might be like, man, like I need them all to be out of 10, and they just beat themselves up about the things that are, let's say, lacking in their eyes, where other people might feel completely differently yet be in the same situation. Is, let's say they have those areas that maybe are rated a little bit low than they ideally would want them to be long term, but if they can recognize, well, actually that's because maybe this other area of my life, maybe for a new mom like you guys might see that, well, my family is actually at like a 10 out of 10 right now, and I am just loving the fact that this is a 10 out of 10, and I am okay with the fact that maybe my health is a 6 out of 10 when I'm used to it being a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. And we can compare ourselves and we can think, well, it's not good enough. And we can just measure the gap between where we want to be and where we are and beat ourselves up over it and cause this unnecessary suffering. Or we can just accept and be okay with the fact that, yeah, I'm a little bit lower rated in this area of my life right now than I ideally want to be long term. And I'm okay with that. Eventually, if that's a priority to me, I might raise it up higher, but that's just not what I'm focused on in this season of my life. And this might be something that maybe is a little bit more specific to you guys as health and fitness coaches who have devoted a lot of your life to your health and fitness habits and routines. I think you guys feel just so confident in knowing that all the work you've done up to this point, you can lean on that and you can stand on that, and you know that you can pick up any habits, any goals. Like once you set your mind to those things, you know that they're right there for you. Whereas maybe some other women struggle a little bit more, and you guys know this better than I do, having worked with a lot of women in this position, but a lot of the new moms that maybe have never built up those routines before, and suddenly they find themselves as a new mom and they realize, I'm supposed to teach this tiny little human how to have a healthy relationship with food, how to have healthy habits, how to, grow up and live a healthy, meaningful life. And yet I'm not really sure that I actually know how to do that. I'm not feeling really confident in my own health routines or my own knowledge about how I should fuel my body, how I should feed my body. And I think that can cause a lot of suffering for women. So I'm curious, like, what thoughts come up for you guys off of that initially. So I'll pause there. Anything you want to add?
I think that you're onto something where, even both Liv and I have expressed like this is our job. This is what we help people with all the time. But like we still have struggled. It has not been smooth sailing the entire time for either one of us. I think um, having a sturdy foundation is something that can help make the process so much easier. But if there's someone out there that feels like they don't have that foundation, like it's never too late to implement one. And just like we would say with any client, but especially in postpartum, like starting small and picking out what is manageable and what is realistic and building from there. And I am learning this in postpartum more than any other phase of my life, but it's okay to ask for help, whether that's from a coach who knows the habits to introduce that could help you feel really good, or it's, asking your parents to, come over and watch your baby for a little bit so you can go to the gym. I think asking for help in this season of life, while that I would probably say has been one of the hardest things for me to do, it's one of the ones that has the biggest payoff for me. But I also think with all of that said, if we go back and we really think about the habits that Liv and I have stated, right? None of these things are, magic or, super incredibly challenging, like only we can do it. It's like they're things that everyone can do. It just when you introduce it, how you introduce it is so dependent on the person. But there's no secrets over here. We're not drinking special Kool-Aid. And I think that that's important to acknowledge too. It's not saying that it's easy, but it can be really simple habits that make you feel so much better. But for me, the work that was the most important to do before even getting pregnant and having my daughter was work on my body image. There was years of my life that I swore I would never get pregnant because I didn't want to get fat. Like I would tell my family that. And all of the inner work that I did to really improve how I saw myself has drastically helped me cope with the changes that my body went through, not only in pregnancy, but the changes that it's still going through postpartum. And so I think for me, that was probably the most important thing to really focus on before I got pregnant. Because if we're struggling with body image before we get pregnant, it's really, really hard. It can be really hard to see your body change. But if you love yourself no matter what your body looks like, it can make the process of being pregnant like so much more enjoyable. That was my experience, and a couple of the clients that I work with, I know that that was their experience too.
I love that. Liv, what about you? Anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I really just want to echo Kat here, in saying that when we are sharing, the things that we've done, it can be surprising to hear that it's like, we're talking about we go on walks and we drink water and we make sure we eat food. And, you know, for me, like making sure I can sleep when I can. And that's something that, I know can't always be controlled. I have, a few clients who are, new moms. And one of the things is like, we know we can't always control the sleep. That might not be within our control, but, looking at what habits we can control and, and I think that that's what it can really come down to is, these habits. And it may seem like, that's it. And I remember I had a call with one of my clients who was newly postpartum, and she was like, well, what would you do if you were in my shoes? And I was like, this is what I'm doing. Like, I'm telling you, like, and she was shocked. She was like, you're telling me like I don't need to go to the gym 5 days a week or this or that. And, I was like, we're gonna meet you where you're at right now, and we're gonna implement these habits. And, she's feeling so much better, and she's seeing like her body start to change. And it really does come down to what can, not necessarily be easy, because there's definitely challenges to it, but can be just like the foundational habits. So, I think that that's a huge takeaway that I hope that people listening can really, catch on and bookmark there.
I love it. Well, there's so much gold here. I think I could continue to pick your guys' brains for hours on this, but I know you have other things to get to. So, I mean, let me just close out with this. Like, of all the things that you talked about, or things that maybe you didn't even get a chance to mention, maybe is coming up for you now, what kind of, I guess, thoughts or words of encouragement or advice do you want the women who maybe are pregnant or postpartum or hope to one day be pregnant or postpartum to walk away from this episode with, to maybe help them with any aspirations they have for changing their body postpartum, or for developing healthy habits, or for having a healthy relationship with food that they can model for their family? What do you want these women to walk away from this episode with?
Yeah, I love this question. And so one thing that really just like came up for me when you were saying that, and it may be on the same track or not, but was just thinking about how, you know, what you experience if you struggle, it's so okay. Like I remember just like having times, and I'm like getting emotional because like I just thought I was like just like so isolated. But like it's so normal to struggle. But I think that's like one of the biggest takeaways is like even as like coaches, we struggle. We have to navigate like the ups and downs, and like it's so okay and it's so normal. And like what Kat said, like it's okay to ask for help from like people in your life, from coaches, like anything, like it's so okay. And like your best is always good enough. Sorry guys, I didn't think I was gonna get emotional today.
You do not have to
Olivia,
apologize.
I just want to give you the biggest hug. And I mean, to echo everything that you just said, I'm like 100%. You said it so beautifully. I think when it comes to me, it's so hard to just pick, one. So I might say a couple that came right to my mind. But I do hope that anyone listening can really try on the perspective shift of that pregnancy and postpartum can offer so many opportunities, that you're not limited to who you once were. I think it's incredibly important. I hope anyone that's listening to this knows that if they just had a baby, like your body just went through so much, and we want to give ourselves time to heal and to adjust to not only like what your body went through, but how life looks. And I think being able to really just give yourself grace throughout your journey, as with anything, being frustrated at ourselves when we're trying to do something is only going to like make things worse. It's not going to help. So being kind to yourself, talking to yourself like you want your future kids to talk to themselves can be a great perspective. But instead of trying to bounce back and like having this super tight grip on like I have to get back into those jeans I was wearing before, or whatever maybe like you might be thinking of, think about like just moving forward, because it can be better. Like I definitely would have never thought like I could feel better in my body after having a baby than before, but I do. And I also think it's important to acknowledge that just because I feel that way today with you guys here doesn't mean that, in 3 hours I might be like, oh my gosh, like, and have a little moment. But I think it can be helpful to try and keep bad body image thoughts like to a moment, keeping struggles to a moment, and trying to like just get in the habit of like changing our perspective to like finding the good in it, because pregnancy and postpartum is a beautiful journey, and in that journey there's going to be hard times and struggles, but it's worth it. And at the end of the day, no matter what, you're doing the hardest job on the planet. You're raising a tiny human being that's growing up in this world, so no matter what, like, you're doing a good job. So like give yourself some more credit would probably be the biggest one.
Amazing. Amazing. Liv, sorry, I felt like I cut you off there. There's something you wanted to add?
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say, like, I kind of coming off of like Kat, what you're saying is I love that perspective of like there can be the struggles and like that can be so okay, but there's also like just so much beauty to it, and I think that that's important to remember too. So I love that you brought that up, and I that's all. Just I love that.
And that's all.
Well, you both are incredible moms. Gigi and Hayes are very lucky to have you both. Our clients are lucky to have you both. And you know what? Hopefully one day I'll be able to join the Cool Moms Club, and I'll be very lucky to have you both kind of over my shoulders helping me out from your journeys. But I'm sure some women are probably going to want to connect with you guys from the amazing, just vulnerable stories and advice that you shared in this episode. So where can they connect with you all? Where could they reach out or just learn a little bit more about your journeys?
Yeah.
You can find me. Sorry, I was pointing at Liv and then I started talking. But you can find me and connect with me. I'd love to chat more with anyone listening who could relate or had questions. But on Instagram, it's at Coached by Kat, Kat.
And I am also on Instagram at Lifting with Liv Fit. So I would love to connect with anyone listening or resonating or also having questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for spending some time on here, just sharing your mother wisdom with us. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope that you do reach out to Kat and Liv, because they are really incredible human beings to connect with. But thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another great episode.